Overseas now, and Dr. Anthony Fauci has admitted there were no clinical trials to back up the recommended 6 feet distancing guidelines during the COVID-19 pandemic. The former head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases has fronted Congress for the first time since he retired from public office, where he was grilled on the origins of COVID-19.
The man who became the face of America's coronavirus response has become one of the country's most divisive figures. For the first time since he left his job as the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci fronted Congress for a grilling.
The accusation being circulated that I influenced these scientists to change their minds by bribing them with millions of dollars in grant money is absolutely false and simply preposterous.
The hearing became heated at points.
Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor, you're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer. I want to talk about this right here.
They're treating you, Dr. Fauci, like a convicted felon. Actually, you probably wish they were treating you like a convicted felon. They treat convicted felons with love and admiration.
Dr. Fauci admitted that the social distancing guidelines to stay 6 feet apart had no scientific basis.
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared. It actually came from the CDC. The CDC was responsible for those kinds of guidelines for schools, not me. So when I said that it just appeared, it appeared. Was there any science behind it? What I meant by no science behind it is that there wasn't a controlled trial that said compare 6 foot with 3 feet with 10 feet. So there wasn't that scientific evaluation of it.
And hit back at any suggestions he was involved in any cover-up to try to discredit the lab leak theory.
But I don't think the concept of there being a lab leak is inherently a conspiracy theory. What is conspiracy is the kind of distortions of that particular subject, like it was a lab leak and I was parachuted into the CIA like Jason Bourne and told the CIA that they should really not be talking about a lab leak.
Thank you.
I had no input into the content of the published paper. The second issue is a false accusation that I tried to cover up the possibility that the virus originated from a lab. In fact, the truth is exactly the opposite.
While the hearing went over many aspects of how America handled the COVID-19 pandemic, the focus from many lawmakers was ensuring that the country is better prepared if another pandemic were to happen.
Dr. Fauci, whether intentional or not, you became so powerful that any disagreements the public had with you were forbidden and censored on social and most legacy media time and time again. This is why so many Americans became so angry, because this was fundamentally un-American. If I make a mistake, I answer to the people of Ohio who elected me and to my own conscience. When you and your agency made mistakes, Dr. Fauci, what happened? We all need to be held accountable. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, we were wrong.
Annalise Nielsen, Sky News, Washington, D.C.
Anybody who's looking at this carefully realizes that there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science, because I represent science.
Dr. Anthony Fauci now admitting social distancing wasn't based on science. Fauci telling a House committee this week the idea, standing 6 feet apart, quote, just sort of appeared. The shocking admission comes nearly 4 years after statements like this.
Every aspect of that ending the COVID outbreak in 30 days has some aspect of it of physical separation, whether that's avoiding crowds, whether that's staying 6 feet away from people, whether that's doing teleworking. All of it does that. That's our most important tool.
Just is so upsetting because We went through so much during that period, and it seems like every time we learned something new from Dr. Fauci, it was all made up. I mean, didn't even have direction. There was no science there.
Bottom line, we don't have to worry about this one, right?
Well, obviously you need to take it seriously and do the kinds of things that the CDC and the Department of Homeland Security are doing. But this is not a major threat for the people in the United States, and this is not something that the citizens of the United States right now should be worried about. So if you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense that it likely would be more effective. And that's the reason why you see people either double masking or doing a version of an N95. I can say as a public health official that I would urge the leaders, the local political and other leaders in states and cities and towns to be as forceful as possible in getting your citizenry to wear masks. Masks are important as part of the physical distance. Physical distancing is the most important, but practically when you're living your life and trying to open up the country, you are going to come into contact with people. And for that reason, we know that masks are really important and we should be using them, everyone. Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. It might. I mean, if you really want perfect protection of your mucosal surfaces, just for your audience, Jen, as you very well know, you have mucosa in the nose, mucosa in the mouth, but you also have mucosa in the eye. And that's one of the things that, theoretically, you should protect all the mucosal surfaces. So if you have goggles or an eye shield, you should use it. I mean, it's not universally recommended, but if you really want to be complete, you should probably use it if you can. It's just that it's so easy for people to just make a cloth mask. That even if you are vaccinated, it is recommended that you follow the public health recommendations of wearing a mask, staying distant, avoiding congregate settings and crowds, and washing your hands often.
Oh, of course. Social distance. But here he is at a baseball game. No social distance. Mask down. Why wasn't he called out on it? The mainstream media gave Trump a hard time, but Fauci, he always got a pass. This is all a made-up lie to fool the dumb masses. When are you gonna get it? And he can't even throw a baseball worth of shit either. What the hell is that?
So you could get infected and have absolutely no symptoms, but you might have virus in your nasopharynx, even though you don't have any symptoms. So you want to make sure that you do something like wear a mask, like keep your distance, so you don't inadvertently infect someone else. What about a month or so, or 2 or 3 ago, when people were saying, you don't really need to wear a mask? Well, the reason for that is that we were concerned, the public health community, and many people were saying this, were concerned that it was at a time when personal protective equipment, including the N95 masks and the surgical masks, were in very short supply. And we wanted to make sure that the people, namely the healthcare workers, who were brave enough to put themselves in harm's way to take care of people who were infected with the coronavirus and the danger of them getting infected, we did not want them to be without the equipment that they needed. So there was not enthusiasm about going out and everybody buying a mask or getting a mask. We were afraid that that would deter away from the people who really needed it.
I have so many questions to ask you, as you can imagine. But first off, it's been 24 hours since you got the Moderna vaccine. How are you feeling? Any side effects? Is your arm sore?
Well, I actually feel quite good. I do have a little bit of a sore arm. After the vaccination, it was about maybe 6 to 8 hours. I felt absolutely nothing. And then towards the late afternoon, I started to get soreness in the arm. This is very typical of vaccinations. The same thing happened with other non-COVID vaccines that I've had over the years.
I felt a little bit achy, but nothing to be bothering or distracting me. Went to bed last night, had a good night's sleep. Woke up this morning. The only thing I have is just a little bit of a soreness in the arm. Otherwise, I'm doing really well.
Oh, shit.